Well, hello, thank you for joining us for day 5 of this week's devotional, Pastor's Devotional Bible Study Series, inspired by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. If you're wondering, don't know who that is, go to day 1, watch day 1. It'll give you a sense of who that is and why this particular theologian, pastor, professor, activist has inspired me, and why I'm reading more of his stuff these days, and why this has caused me to turn to these scriptures for Bible study. I'm thinking about the example that Bonhoeffer gave for us as Christians to speak truth to power. He did it in such a way that he lost his life to the Nazi regime in a concentration camp, not because he was Jewish, because he was a Christian speaking truth to the power of the Nazi regime, and he was killed for it. So it got me to thinking, where are places where we see Jesus speak truth to power, and how can we learn from that and do that same kind of work in our own Christian life? So every week, or every day this week, looking at a different scripture and considering how Jesus did this kind of work. So today we're in the Gospel of Mark. Gospel of Mark, chapter 15. As soon as it was morning, the chief priest held a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council. They bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered him, "You say so." Then the chief priests accused him of many things. Pilate asked him again, "Have you no answer? See how many charges they bring against you?" But Jesus made no further reply, so that Pilate was amazed. Now at the festival, he used to release a prisoner for them, anyone for whom they asked. Now a man called Barabbas was in prison with the rebels who had committed murder during the insurrection. So the crowd came and began to ask Pilate to do for them according to his custom. Then he answered them, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" For he realized that it was out of jealousy that the chief priests had handed him over. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have him release Barabbas for them instead. Pilate spoke to them again. "Then what do you wish me to do with the man you call the king of the Jews?" They shouted back, "Crucify him." Pilate asked them, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him." So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified. I want to think today about speaking truth to power in places where people hand off their responsibility to avoid accountability. We see all too often that people of power hand off responsibility to someone else in order to avoid accountability. And, you know, the scripture says, to whom much is given, much will be expected. For those who have a lot, their responsibility comes along with it. For those who have power in the world, responsibility comes with it. And where power gets mismanaged and misused is when those people who have power hand off responsibilities that they should have in order to avoid accountability. I mean, let's just think for a moment. And the reason I'm doing these Bible studies every day is because we are in a global pandemic. And at the very beginning, months ago of this global pandemic, when we all, myself included, thought it was maybe you didn't, but I thought, a couple weeks, we're going to be locked down. And so why don't I sort of get creative and I'll do these daily devotionals. I didn't realize I was going to be doing daily devotionals for months. And unfortunately, right now, numbers are spiking again, and it looks like that I'm not going to be done doing these daily devotionals for months to come. And amidst this, how many times have you heard leaders federal leaders say, well, the state should have done this, and state leaders say, well, the Fed should have done this, and local leaders who say, well, the states should have done this, or leaders say, well, it's out of my hands. They've made this decision about what to open or what to close, and we just have to go along with it. Part of our challenge in not overcoming this pandemic yet is that some in power have been too quick to hand off their responsibility, because if they didn't make the decision, then they can't be held accountable for making the decision. They didn't want the accountability, so they handed off the responsibility. And my guess is that you could find that in your workplace or the place where you go to school. And we have to speak some truth to that mismanagement of power as Christians, right? Because as Christians, we understand that God has blessed us so that we might be a blessing to others. That God has given to us so that we might give to others. That with the blessing comes a responsibility. And so, with the blessings that we have come a responsibility to, for example, feed people who don't have food. Is it our job? No, but it's our responsibility as Christians. And to hand that off to someone else simply means that we're avoiding accountability. Or to not vote hands off a responsibility. To not worry about the problems of homelessness or gun violence or you name it. That when we hand off that responsibility, all too often what we're trying to do is we're trying to get out of the accountability. So are there places where each of us do it? Probably. Are there places where we could speak truth into the power of our own lives? Definitely. Are there places where we could speak truth to the powers that be in our world so that they would take responsibility and stand up and be accountable for the positions to which they have been chosen or elected or they have gained? Bad power gives responsibility to others in order to avoid accountability for self. But we as Christian people know that we are working out our salvation with fear and trembling. There is a point of accountability and responsibility in our faith tradition. So let us speak truth to that power. God bless.